History isn't a straight road stretching endlessly into the horizon. It doesn't march forward in perfect progress, nor descend into permanent decline. History is a rhythm. It pulses like a heartbeat. It rises, it falls, it begins again. The Strauss-Howe generational theory names this rhythm the turnings. Each turning lasts roughly 20 to 25 years, the length of a generation's formative stage. Together, 4 turnings compose a full cycle, a seculum, about 80 to 100 years, a long human life, a chapter of civilization. And within each seculum, the story always unfolds in the same pattern. The first turning is the high. Institutions are strong, collective purpose is clear, and individuals feel secure inside the structure of society. Think of the optimism of post-war America in the late 1940s and 50s. A nation flush with victory, order, and growth. The second turning is an awakening, a spiritual and cultural upheaval, when people begin to question conformity, authority, and meaning. The 1960s, counterculture, civil rights, feminism, and the protests against Vietnam were the last great awakening. The third turning is the unraveling. Institutions weaken, cynicism rises, and individualism is celebrated above collective duty. The late Cold War, the 1980s and 90s, with deregulation, consumerism, and a retreat from social trust. This was the unraveling of our current cycle. And then comes the fourth turning, the crisis. It's the season when the old order can no longer hold. Institutions collapse, trust disintegrates, and the very framework of society is forced to rebuild, or perish. It's never a gentle season. It's a storm. History shows the pattern. The last fourth turning, the Great Depression and World War II, a crucible that destroyed the old order of empire and gave birth to the modern world. Before that, the American Civil War, which ripped the nation apart, ending slavery but leaving scars that are still visible today. Before that, the American Revolution, when 13 colonies defied empire, declared independence, and redefined what governance could mean. Each crisis was different. Each was unpredictable in its exact shape and violence, but all shared the same essence, the collapse of the old and the birth of the new. The pattern holds. Every 4 generations, the system cracks. And here we are again. Every turning has its actors. Every cycle has its cast. The shape of history is not only determined by events, but by the generations who live through them, who rise, who fall, who inherit power, and who demand change. Born into the golden glow of post-war America, the boomers entered the world defined by abundance and order. The factories were humming, suburbs were sprawling, highways stretching to the horizon. They were the children of victory, raised in security, nurtured by optimism, and promised the continuation of progress. But this comfort bred restlessness. As they came of age in the 1960s and 70s, the boomers demanded more than material stability. They sought meaning. They launched social revolutions, questioned authority, and claimed the cultural high ground. From civil rights to feminism, from rock music to anti-war protests. The boomer generation turned morality and identity into battlefields. When they later moved into power, into Congress, boardrooms, universities, they carried that same conviction. They saw themselves not only as leaders, but as moral arbiters, shaping culture, politics, and the economy according to their vision. But abundance faded, and their dominance hardened into a kind of stagnation, a refusal to relinquish the stage even as their time waned. The children who followed were smaller in number, born in an era less triumphant. Generation X grew up in the shadow of divorce, declining birth rates, layoffs, and deindustrialization. Their childhood was marked by latchkey afternoons, broken trust in authority, and a sense of being left to fend for themselves. They inherited not the optimism of victory, but the disillusionment of limits. Oil shocks, Watergate, stagflation, and the AIDS crisis. Their formative years were colored by doubt. Institutions that boomers had stormed now looked hollow. As adults, Gen X carried a different ethos: skepticism, independence, resilience. They distrusted grand narratives, preferring pragmatism and self-reliance. In politics and culture, they rarely commanded the spotlight, but often played the role of quiet cynics and reluctant managers. They became the backbone of the late Cold War and the tech boom, but always with an edge of irony, unwilling to fully believe in the systems they maintained. Then came the millennials, raised in a very different spirit. They were the most nurtured generation in American history. They were told they were special, encouraged to dream big, promised a bright future of opportunity and mobility. They grew up with helicopter parents, structured activities, and the optimism of the 1990s, when history itself seemed to have ended in triumph. But when they stepped into adulthood, the ground gave way beneath them. The September 11th attack shattered the illusion of safety. The Great Recession crushed their economic prospects. Student debt, stagnant wages, and a fraying safety net trapped them in cycles of delay, delayed homes, delayed families, delayed stability. They became the first American generation expected to do worse than their parents. And yet, paradoxically, they were also the most civic-minded. They leaned towards collaboration, inclusivity, and idealism, but with a bitterness born of betrayal, a sense that the future they were promised was stolen. And now, the youngest cohort takes the stage. Generation Z has never known a world without the internet, smartphones, or social media. They are true digital natives, living simultaneously in physical and virtual worlds, fluent in memes and information flows that leaves older generations scrambling to catch up. But this connectivity has not brought comfort. It's brought anxiety. They have grown up in the shadow of climate change warnings, school shootings, economic instability, and political dysfunction. They scroll through chaos daily: wars, disasters, scandals, delivered in real time, unfiltered, relentless. Yet, they are not naive. If millennials were the hopeful idealists, Gen Z are the sharp-eyed pragmatists. Cynical, yes, but also resourceful, adaptable, capable of wielding new tools with ease, unafraid to question every institution, every system, every truth handed down. Their challenge is not finding information, it's finding trust. And now the wheel turns. Boomers, once the dominant voice in culture and politics, are aging out of leadership. Gen X, never large enough to fully replace them, serves as a transitional bridge. Meanwhile, millennials and Gen Z, together the largest generational block in history, move into critical mass. This shift is not just demographic, it's structural. The institutions of mid-20th century America, its schools, its government, its financial systems, its very infrastructure, were built for a different time, a different population, a different set of expectations. And they no longer fit. The boomers still cling to power, but their grip weakens. Millennials push for reform, but face disillusionment at every turn. Gen Z prepares to inherit a broken system, uncertain whether to fix it, replace it, or walk away entirely. The pressure builds with every passing year. The fault lines deepen. The stage is set. The tension is building. Strauss and Howe gave us a map of the rhythm, a cycle of generations repeating like the tides. But even they could not foresee the storm surge barreling towards us now. Enter futurist David Leyden. Where Strauss and Howe saw a pattern of human behavior, Leyden adds something new, something faster, sharper, more explosive: technology. He argues that the fourth turning of our time does not unfold in isolation like the crisis of centuries past. Instead, it collides with an exponential disruption, the runaway acceleration of human invention. In earlier fourth turnings, society wrestled with one or maybe two existential upheavals: a civil war, a Great Depression, a global war. Terrible, yes, but singular. Each crisis could dominate the stage, force society to rally around one central challenge. But this time is different. The 2020s are not defined by one crisis. They're defined by all of them, converging at once. Look around. Political legitimacy is in decline. Across North America and beyond, faith in governments erodes. Elections are contested, institutions distrusted. Truth itself is fragmented. Populations polarize, convinced not only that leaders are corrupt, but that the very system is rigged against them. Economic systems are cracking under inequality. The middle class, once the anchor of democratic stability, shrinks year after year. Wealth concentrates at the top, while wages stagnate and debts climb. The promises of capitalism feel hollow. Its rewards captured by the few, its burdens carried by the many. Ecological stress is pushing climate tipping points. Wildfires, floods, hurricanes, droughts. No longer distant warnings, but lived reality. The infrastructure of modern civilization, built for a stable climate, buckles under instability. Food systems, migration patterns, and coastlines tremble on the edge of chaos. And towering above it all, a technological wave powerful enough to rewrite civilization itself. Artificial intelligence rivals human reasoning. Automation threatens the very foundation of work. Biotechnology redefines what it means to be alive. Energy transitions disrupt global politics, while digital networks weave and unravel identities in real time. This is not a slow disruption. It's exponential. Each year builds on the last. Each breakthrough accelerates the next. In the American Revolution, the crisis was independence. In the Civil War, the crisis was union. In the Great Depression and World War II, the crisis was survival. But in our fourth turning, the crisis is everything at once: political, economic, ecological, technological. A collision not of single shocks, but of cascading systems, each amplifying the others. And so Leyden reframes the moment. This is not simply a generational handoff, as Strauss-Howe described. It's not the old order resisting its death. It's a systemic crisis, a convergence so complete that no institution, no belief system, no government, no market, no individual can remain untouched. We are not simply at the end of a cycle. We are standing in the blast zone of history's collision course. Strauss and Howe gave us the map, a rhythm of generations cycling with the predictability of seasons. Leyden takes that rhythm and accelerates it, fusing human cycles with technological velocity. When their insights overlap, they converge on a narrow but decisive window: the middle years of this decade, from 2025 to 2030. By this point, the baby boomers, the generation that has dominated politics, business, and culture for half a century, will be stepping off the stage. Retirement, incapacity, and mortality will thin their ranks. Their grip on the levers of power will weaken, not by choice, but by inevitability. In their place, millennials and Gen Z, together the largest generational bloc in history, will rise into critical mass. They will begin to dominate not only the workplace, but also consumer markets, cultural trends, and eventually the political order. This handoff is not simply a change in personnel. It's a shift in worldview, values, and priorities. At the same time, the economic foundation that once supported the middle class continues to fracture. Automation spreads through warehouses, offices, and even creative industries, threatening entire categories of work that once provided stability. Artificial intelligence inserts itself into decision-making, eroding the uniqueness of human labor and human judgment. The workplace, as it was defined in the 20th century, is not merely evolving, it's dissolving. Meanwhile, trust in the pillars of authority collapses further. Governments, paralyzed by partisanship, struggle to project competence. Corporations, bloated with profit, appear unmoored from social responsibility. Media, fractured into countless streams of misinformation and hyperpartisan echo chambers, no longer holds the authority of a common narrative. What was once a shared sense of reality splinters into 1,000 competing truths. And all of this unfolds against the backdrop of infrastructure designed for a different century. The roads, grids, and pipelines of the mid-20th century America, grown under modern demand. Healthcare systems, built for smaller populations with different expectations, creak towards dysfunction. Political institutions, conceived in an analog age, falter in the face of digital acceleration. The structures we inherited are not merely strained. They are breaking under conditions they were never designed to withstand. This moment, then, is not simply a generational turnover. It's not just a changing of the guard. It's a convergence of demographic shift, technological disruption, institutional decay, and ecological stress into a single crucible. It's the tightening of all the world's fault lines at once. The question that looms over the years ahead is not whether change will come. Change is already here. The question is whether this transformation will unfold through adaptation and reform, or whether it will be forced through collapse and upheaval. This uncertainty is not about if the system gives way, but how violent the transition will be when it does come. Every fourth turning has its climax, its breaking point. It's the moment when pressure can no longer be contained, when the old order clings desperately to life and the new order strains with equal desperation to be born. History tells us that the collision is never quiet. It always sharpens into rupture. We can see the pattern in hindsight. In 1776, the breaking point was the shattering of colonial bonds, the moment when people decided to sever themselves from empire and risk everything on self-rule. In 1861, it was the firing on Fort Sumter, the spark that lit the Civil War, when compromise gave way to open fracture. In 1929, it was the collapse of financial markets, when the illusion of endless growth imploded and cascaded into depression. In 1941, it was Pearl Harbor, the attack that dragged America into global war, sealing the fate of nations for generations. Each of these breaking points was different in cause, scale, and violence, but each carried the same essence: the death of the old system and the birth of the new one, baptized in upheaval. And so we ask, what will it be this time? Will the breaking point arrive as a financial collapse with debt, inequality, and fragile markets finally snapping under their own weight? Will it come as a legitimacy crisis, when faith in government and law evaporates, leaving institutions hollow and authority unenforceable? Will it reveal itself in the breakdown of supply chains, a grinding paralysis where the essentials of daily life, food, energy, medicine, can no longer be trusted to arrive? Will it manifest as a political schism, not just partisan rancor, but the irreparable fracture of the body politic, a nation unable to agree on its own existence? Or will it be something none of us can yet imagine, an unexpected shock, a black swan event that shatters our complacency and forces choices we never prepared for? This is the uncertainty of every fourth turning. We don't know the exact trigger. We only know the inevitability of rupture. But the deeper question is not what breaks. It's who breaks first. Does the system itself collapse under the weight of contradictions it can no longer sustain? Or do we, the people, lose the will to participate, to trust, to obey, to cooperate, and thereby bring the systems down ourselves? History suggests both are possible. Empires often fall, not solely because they are defeated, but because their citizens stop believing in them. The unraveling of order is as much a crisis of faith as it is of structure. And that's the knife's edge of our present moment. The system trembles, but so too does our trust in it. Which will give way first? The machinery of governance and economy? Or our willingness to remain inside a bargain that sustains them? That's the breaking point, and it's coming. The fourth turning is not prophecy. It's not a script written in advance, with fate sealed and destinies fixed. It's a pattern. It's the rhythm of generations, the heartbeat of history, the cycle of crisis and renewal that has repeated for centuries. It doesn't tell us exactly what will happen, but it does tell us when the ground beneath us is loosening, when the structures we trust can no longer hold their weight, when the storm is inevitable, even if its lightning has not yet struck. And now, as the clock strikes again, North America steps into its moment of truth. The past generations had their crucibles: revolution, civil war, depression, world war. Each left scars, but also foundations. Each reshaped the order of things. And now our turn has come. But unlike the crises of old, this one carries something new. Technology accelerates the cycle, magnifying every tension, amplifying every disruption. Artificial intelligence, automation, climate feedbacks, social fragmentation all crash together at the very moment when generational turnover reaches its peak. What might once have been a single storm now gathers as a hurricane of overlapping fronts. The years ahead are not simply a test of policy, leadership, or politics as usual. They're a test of something deeper: our social contract. Do we still believe in the bargain that holds us together? Do we still trust one another enough to rebuild what is broken? Already the old order shows its cracks. The pillars are fracturing, the narrative's unraveling. You can feel it in politics, in markets, in culture, in the quiet exhaustion of daily life. The institutions designed for another century falter in this one. They cannot carry us forward as they are. So the question is not whether the system breaks. It's what comes after, what rises from the pieces. Will we, as in past fourth turnings, forge something stronger, in order more resilient, more just, more attuned to the challenges of its age? Or will we falter, letting collapse spiral into chaos, division, and decline? That answer is not written in the pattern. It's written in us. The clock is struck. The turning is here. And the future is waiting to be made.